If there ever was a reason for you to go to the cinema and pay full price for an IMAX ticket, this is it. Let's talk about Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer is the latest film from Christopher Nolan, and it is a biopic about the father of the atomic bomb, J. Robert Oppenheimer. It stars Cillian Murphy in the titular role, as well as Robert Downey Jr. and Emily Blunt, and that is to name but a few of the numerous actors who are part of this massive ensemble cast. Now, true to its title, the film focuses on the life of Oppenheimer and his involvement in the Manhattan Project. Now, this movie is shot in a unique way where it focuses on two separate hearings. One is the clearance hearing of Oppenheimer for the Atomic Energy Commission, and the second is the hearing of Lewis Strauss when he is selected to be part of cabinet. Now, Christopher Nolan has made many great films in the past, but I could say that this film can be considered his magnum opus. We can see everything that he's been working towards in his previous film all come together as part of this movie. He's messing with time, the way he edits his movies, the sound design, his love for practical effects. For example, I mentioned earlier this movie focuses on two separate hearings, and it focuses on three separate time periods, very similar to what he did in Dunkirk. But I feel like the editing in this movie is he's taken the lessons he has learned from Dunkirk and applied it to this movie. So whereas in Dunkirk you weren't fully aware that you were in three separate timelines that will all converge, here you are clearly aware of the separate timelines, because you have one where it is him in his youth and towards his involvement in the Manhattan Project, and another one where it is his hearing, and then you have Strauss's hearing on top of that. And so the work he did in Dunkirk, the work he's done in Inception, the work he did with Interstellar, it feels like he's taken all that he's learned and put it into this movie. Speaking of editing, this movie is more of a talkie. It's a lot of people talking. It's 3 hours of people talking, which is not really an action-packed movie, as opposed to what Christopher Nolan is tend to be known as more of an action director. Whereas this movie is more a lot of people having conversation, and that can be really boring if done wrongly. And you add on top of that the complexity of being in three separate time periods, it can really take someone out of the movie. But because of the sort of masterful editing of this movie, there is never a boring moment. Now, there may be some bias for me saying this, because I am someone who enjoys the whole theoretical physics thing and the whole history thing that this movie presents, and maybe that's what kept me interested. But for me, it's really easy to do that wrongly, and I think Nolan and his team, they know how to shoot and edit movies to keep your attention onto the screen. I think with Tenet, they made several big mistakes where it got too high concept that you didn't really understand what was going on. But here they kept it simple. Nolan and his team, they took the lessons that they've learned from previous movies and they've applied it here. So the movie flows really well. The pacing, it's a 3-hour movie with people talking, but the pacing is, for me, superb. There's never a moment where you're taking your eye off the screen to look at your watch or to check your phone, to check the time, because if you're doing that, that means the movie has kind of lost your attention. And for me, I've watched it twice, and throughout both the total 6 hours, I never took my eyes off the screen once. Now, as I mentioned earlier, this movie focuses more on the life of the titular character of Oppenheimer, and it paints him as an incredibly brilliant man, but also an incredibly flawed man. And it is on the shoulders of Cillian Murphy to convey to us that this man is a vulnerable person despite his incredible brilliance, that he has his flaws. And my God, does Cillian Murphy deliver this is an Oscar-worthy performance, and I wouldn't be surprised to see if he is nominated or he even wins the Oscar for Best Actor in a Motion Picture at the upcoming Oscars, because he carries the film so well, and he keeps us interested in the man himself. Now, I would also like to mention Robert Downey Jr., who is not on screen for long, as opposed to Oppenheimer, who takes up a lot of screen time. Robert Downey Jr.'s character, which is Louis Strauss, is not in the movie for long, but the impact of his performance, it stays with you. And that's why a lot of other people have been saying that this is also another Oscar-worthy performance in this movie. And not just Robert Downey Jr., Emily Blunt plays Oppenheimer's wife in this movie, and while throughout the movie she doesn't really have much to do, there is a moment, and several moments actually for me, in this movie where she's required to step up to the plate, and my God, she delivers. So yeah, the acting in this film is sublime. And I just mentioned what I would consider three of the more prominent actors in this movie. Matt Damon also gives a incredible performance as General Groves, who recruits Oppenheimer to be part of the Manhattan Project. There is a cameo in here that, it's not shown in any of the trailers, but when you see it, you're just like, I can't believe this guy's in this movie. And even that person gives an incredible performance, even though he's in the movie for minutes. And that's kind of the thing with this movie, is like, it is a massive, massive ensemble cast where you go, oh, that guy, oh, that guy, oh, that guy. Yeah, it's a massive cast, and everyone brings their best. Everybody wants to give their best for this movie. Everybody wants to make it a success. Like, there's no point in the movie where you see a character pop up, an actor pop up, and you just go, that dude really didn't mesh. No, everyone took the instructions, whatever instruction Nolan gave them, and gave their all. Now, as for the music in this movie, the music is done by Ludwig Göransson, and moving on from working with Hans Zimmer, I think Göransson just delivers an incredible score. For me, music complements the movie that you're watching, and Göransson has done incredible work in the past, and he brings his A game to this movie as well. And not just the score, but the sound design as well. I know a lot of people have massive, massive problems with Nolan movies and their sound design, because you tend to hear what's going on in the background and you don't hear what the characters are saying. But I did not find that a problem for this movie. I heard several reviewers say that they couldn't hear some of the early dialogue. For me, that was never a problem throughout the entire movie. I was sit in an IMAX hall, and yeah, I could hear the dialogue clearly, and that is kind of incredibly important when you're in a movie that involves a lot of talking. There was also just the sublime moment of the Trinity test, which is the atom bomb test, and the sound design in that moment was incredible. It's hard to describe outside of a cinema, but it catches you a little bit off guard. I'll just go into a bit of detail, and it might be a slight spoiler, so forgive me for that. But the moment they do the Trinity test, the moment the bomb goes off, and this is kind of brilliant, all sound disappears. It is quiet. There is no music. There is no sound. And then you hear Oppenheimer whisper his iconic line, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." And there's a bright light. And then the explosion kicks in. And it catches you off guard. But it's brilliant because light travels faster than sound. So people see the explosion, and it takes a while for the shockwave to hit. Also, there's been a lot of hype behind watching this movie in 70mm film IMAX, and I do not have a cinema that supports that anywhere near me, but I assure you, going to a regular IMAX cinema or any big picture format is enough. Although IMAX truly gives you the full experience with the picture, the truly bigger picture. And yeah, the picture quality is amazing on IMAX. So if you can, I would highly recommend you to watch this film in IMAX, even though it's not 70mm. If you can go for IMAX with laser, go for IMAX with laser. I haven't gone for IMAX with laser. I hope to go if there's a chance. But if you can't get IMAX with laser, then regular digital IMAX still does an incredible job. But if you can't make it for IMAX and you only can watch it in, regular formats, that's fine. This movie is sublime either way. Just as long as, for me, like I mentioned before, the sound system in your cinema is good, so it can elevate the sound design of this movie. It can elevate the score of this movie. Now, to me, this movie could be considered as close as possible to near cinematic perfection, because when you think of some of the most successful films, the ones that win the most Oscars, a lot of it are technically proficient. But this movie is not just technically proficient with the editing, with the sound design, with the direction, but you couple that with the incredible acting, you get one of the greatest films ever made. I know that there are a large amount of people that would go into this movie and come up and be like, oh, that was boring because it was just a talkie. But for me, it grabbed my attention from the very first minute, and it did not let it go until the end. And it's doing really, really well at the box office, which shows that people have an appetite for films like this. So yeah, that's just a counterpoint to what Martin Scorsese said a few years about people wanting to go on theme park rides, on films that are theme park rides, and they don't want anything that's cerebral. But honestly, I think he was just being really bitter because The Irishman didn't get like a massive cinema release. And yeah, but The Irishman is, it depends on what you put in your film. Scorsese is a brilliant director, but The Irishman is 3 hours of boredom. Whereas for me, with Oppenheimer, it's 3 hours of an entertainment. And it's entertainment that doesn't go too high over your head. So it really comes down to the ability of the director to focus the film onto his audience. The reason why Nolan is a standout name is because people know when they enter the cinema and they watch the movie, they're going to have a good time, or they're going to be made to think, but, without taking them out of the movie. Except for Tenet. That really, really needs a lot of thinking. Yeah. So this is Christopher Nolan at his very best. This is his magnum opus. This is his shot at the Oscar. And I believe he fully deserves it. And I believe that this movie fully deserves to win the most number of Oscars for any movie. It deserves more than 11 Oscars. Yeah, and hopefully when that rolls around, we get that. Anyway, I don't think I have to speak much more on this movie. If you haven't seen it already, please do go and see it. If you can see it in a big picture format, please do go see it in a big picture format. Anyway, I give Oppenheimer a 10 out of 10. So, have you watched Oppenheimer, and what do you think about it if you have, and how would you rank it compared to Nolan's other movies? Anyway, I'll see you in the next video.